In 1870, John D. Rockefeller controlled 4% of American oil refining. 10 years later, he controlled 90%. Not through better technology, not through innovation, through a systematic pattern of domination that made competition mathematically impossible. By 1911, Standard Oil was broken into 34 separate companies by the Supreme Court, and Rockefeller became richer from the breakup than he'd been before it. This is the 7-stage pattern he used, a blueprint for total market control that's been copied by every monopoly since. Once you see how it works, you understand why alternatives disappear, why prices stay fixed, and why dominance compounds until intervention becomes the only option. This is how one man controlled America's most critical resource for 40 years. Monopoly isn't what people think. It's not just being the biggest player. It's not even having the most customers. Real monopoly is structural. It's when competitors can't survive even if they match your quality and undercut your price. Not because you're better, because you've built a system where their costs are higher than your selling price. That's what Rockefeller understood. He didn't just refine oil better. He made it impossible for anyone else to refine oil profitably. The market looked competitive on the surface. Dozens of refineries, prices fluctuating, new entrants arriving. But beneath that, Rockefeller was systematically removing every alternative until only one path remained: sell to him or go bankrupt. This is the pattern Rockefeller followed. 7 stages, each one building on the last, each one eliminating options. Stage 1, efficiency advantage. Become the lowest cost producer through scale and operational excellence. Stage 2, preferential access. Secure exclusive deals with infrastructure providers that competitors can't match. Stage 3, horizontal integration. Buy out competitors at scale, consolidating market share rapidly. Stage 4, vertical integration. Control every step of the supply chain so competitors must buy from you to operate. Stage 5, price manipulation. Use your cost advantage to sell below competitor break-even, driving them out. Stage 6, barrier construction. Lock in suppliers, distributors, and customers through exclusive long-term contracts. Stage 7, inevitability. Reach the point where new competition is structurally impossible, regardless of capital or talent. Rockefeller moved through all 7 stages between 1870 and 1880. By the end, Standard Oil wasn't just dominant. It was the only option that made economic sense. Rockefeller's first major move targeted transportation. In 1870, oil refineries depended entirely on railroads to ship products. Railroads charged everyone the same rate per barrel. Rockefeller approached the railroads with a proposal: give Standard Oil a secret rebate in exchange for guaranteed volume. The railroads agreed. Not just a discount for Standard Oil shipments, but a kickback on every barrel Standard Oil's competitors shipped. Source: Ida Tarbell, The History of the Standard Oil Company, 1904. Here's how it worked. Competitor ships 1 barrel, pays 40 cents. Railroad keeps 25, pays Standard Oil 15. Standard Oil ships 1 barrel, pays 25 cents total. Competitor's shipping cost, 40 cents. Rockefeller's shipping cost, 25. And Rockefeller earns 15 cents on every barrel his competitor ships. The more competitors shipped, the richer Rockefeller got. Competitors couldn't match his prices because their transportation costs were 60% higher. Within 2 years, dozens of Cleveland refineries sold to Rockefeller at distressed prices. This was Stage 2 and Stage 3 combined, preferential access plus rapid consolidation. In 1872, Rockefeller took the railroad strategy further. He formed the South Improvement Company, a cartel of the largest refiners and the major railroads. The plan: divide all oil shipments among cartel members, double rates for outsiders, and use the increased revenue to fund rebates for cartel members. If you weren't in the cartel, your shipping costs would triple overnight. Every independent refiner in Pennsylvania faced a choice: join Rockefeller's cartel and surrender control, or face transportation costs that guaranteed bankruptcy. Within weeks, Rockefeller bought 22 of his 26 Cleveland competitors. Source: Ron Chernow, Titan, The Life of John D. Rockefeller Sr., 1998. The scheme was so aggressive that oil producers in Pennsylvania rioted. The state legislature revoked the South Improvement Company's charter. But by then, Rockefeller had already consolidated Cleveland. The company was gone. The control remained. This was stage 5, price manipulation through structural cost advantage. By 1875, Rockefeller controlled refining, but he didn't control production or distribution, so he moved into both. He bought oil fields, he built pipelines, he purchased tank cars, he established distribution networks, he opened retail kerosene stations. From wellhead to customer, Standard Oil controlled every step. Source Daniel Yergin, The Prize, The Epic Quest for Oil, Money, and Power, 1990. Competitors needed to buy Rockefeller's pipelines to move oil. They needed his tank cars to ship it. They needed his distribution to sell it. And at each stage, Rockefeller extracted margin. Even if a competitor survived refining, they were paying Rockefeller at 3 other points in the chain. By 1880, Standard Oil refined 90% of American oil and controlled 90% of the pipelines. This was stage 4 and stage 6. Vertical integration plus supplier and distributor lock-in. New competitors would need to replicate the entire infrastructure. Billions in capital, decades of relationships, all to compete with a company already operating at maximum efficiency. Here's the thesis. Rockefeller didn't build a monopoly through better refining. He built it through systematic elimination of alternatives. And we're watching the exact same pattern unfold in technology, logistics, and finance today. Standard Oil completed all 7 stages by 1880. Big Tech is on stage 5. Amazon controls logistics infrastructure that competitors must use. Google owns the search and ad distribution layer. Apple controls the app distribution gateway. Each one is vertically integrated. Each one has preferential access to data, infrastructure, or customers that competitors can't replicate. The mechanics are identical. The only difference is speed. Rockefeller took 10 years to move through the stages. Modern monopolies do it in 5. Band stages. Here's what stage 6 looks like in practice. Exclusive supplier agreements, long-term customer lock-ins, proprietary standards that require competitors to adopt your infrastructure to operate. Apple's App Store policies. Amazon's fulfillment by Amazon requirements. Google's search algorithm changes that favor their own products. Each one is a barrier that doesn't eliminate competitors directly, but makes competition structurally unsustainable. Stage 7 is when intervention becomes the only option. That's where Standard Oil ended. In 1911, the Supreme Court ruled that Standard Oil violated the Sherman Antitrust Act and ordered it broken into 34 separate companies. Rockefeller owned shares in all of them. Within a year, the combined value of the separated companies exceeded Standard Oil's previous valuation. Rockefeller became richer after the breakup. That's the paradox of monopoly. Even forced dissolution doesn't reverse the accumulation. Objection 1. Rockefeller succeeded because oil was unregulated. Modern markets have antitrust laws. Counter. Standard Oil operated under the Sherman Antitrust Act, passed in 1890. It took 21 years to enforce. Modern monopolies have been under investigation for a decade with no breakup. Law exists. Enforcement lags structure. Objection 2. Tech companies compete with each other, so it's not a monopoly. Counter. Standard Oil competed with itself through subsidiary brands. That's not competition. That's segmentation. When all options route profit to the same entity, the appearance of choice is structural illusion. Objection 3. Consumers benefit from lower prices, so monopoly is efficient. Counter. Rockefeller lowered kerosene prices from 58 cents per gallon in 1865 to 26 cents in 1870. Then he raised them to 35 cents and kept them there for 2 decades. Low prices are predatory until alternatives are gone. Then prices reflect absence of competition, not efficiency. Here's why this matters now. Rockefeller's pattern took a decade because infrastructure moved slowly. Railroads, pipelines, physical distribution. Modern monopolies move through the same stages in half the time because infrastructure is digital. Network effects compound faster. Customer lock-in happens through data, not geography. Once a company controls the infrastructure layer, the app store, the logistics network, the payment rails, competition requires replicating the entire system. That's not a high barrier. That's a structural impossibility. And here's the irreversibility problem. Even if you break up a monopoly, the expertise, the relationships, the brand equity, the infrastructure, all of that remains. Standard Oil was split into 34 companies. Within 20 years, they were consolidating again. Exxon, Mobil, Chevron, all descendants of Standard Oil. The breakup didn't end the pattern, it just distributed it. So what changes the trajectory? Not consumer choice. Rockefeller's competitors offered lower prices and failed because structural cost disadvantages made sustainability impossible. Not innovation. Standard Oil wasn't technologically inferior, it was economically optimized to a point where innovation couldn't overcome cost disadvantage. Not market forces. Markets reward efficiency, and monopoly is efficient for the monopolist. What works? Structural intervention before stage 6 is complete. Forced interoperability. Mandated infrastructure access for competitors. Prohibition of vertical integration past a certain threshold. The window is narrow. Once stage 7 is reached, once alternatives are structurally impossible, intervention becomes breakup, and breakup doesn't reverse accumulation. Rockefeller proved that. The question isn't whether the pattern works, it's whether intervention happens before inevitability. In 1870, John D. Rockefeller controlled 4% of American oil. 10 years later, 90%. Not because he refined oil better, because he built a system where competition became mathematically unsustainable. That's not history, that's the active blueprint. If you want to understand how markets actually consolidate, not the theory, the mechanics, subscribe to Wealth Archives. We break down the patterns of wealth and power that repeat across industries and centuries. Comment below, what modern company is closest to Rockefeller's Standard Oil playbook? New episodes posted regularly. Once you see the pattern, you can't unsee it.